Welcome to Castified. Okay, so today on the deep dive, we're really getting into something. Well, something that feels pretty urgent right now.
Yeah, it really does. A lot of shifting.
We're looking at, the state of modern mental health, this kind of rising tide of addiction pornography is a big one we need to talk about, and just these profound societal shifts impacting our relationships, our well-being.
Uh-huh.
And our mission here, really, is to try and explore why. Why are these challenges popping up? What does it reveal about, well, us, human nature?
Right.
And maybe most importantly, what concrete steps can you, listening right now, actually take for self-mastery in a world that, frankly, often feels chaotic, out of control even?
And for this deep dive, our insights, they're coming directly from a really in-depth discussion with a Harvard-trained psychiatrist.
Okay.
So we're distilling their perspective on, neurological cycles, these huge societal pressures we're all under, and maybe some surprising, non-traditional paths to internal change.
Really digging into the why behind
Yeah.
what so many of us are feeling.
Exactly. That's the core of it.
All right, so let's unpack this. First big point.
Right.
It seems all addictions, like across the board, are genuinely on the rise.
That's what the data suggests, yeah.
And this isn't just about, specific drugs or behaviors. It feels like it's signaling something bigger, a fundamental shift in society, maybe.
That's a key takeaway. It points away from just the substance itself and towards the environment, the underlying reasons why people are turning to these things more.
And pornography comes up as a significant coping mechanism in this context.
It does. And physiologically, it's interesting. When you engage with it, or even just general sexual stimulation, it actually suppresses negative emotions. Things like fear, anxiety.
Mhm.
They get dampened down in the amygdala.
The amygdala, and that's the brain's sort of emotional fight or flight center.
Exactly, the survival center. So you get this temporary relief from those negative feelings.
But that suppression, that's where the trap lies, isn't it? Because those feelings don't just disappear.
No, not at all. They fester. They often grow stronger over time when they're just pushed down.
So you can get caught in this loop. The worse you feel, maybe the harder it is to connect with people, which pushes you more towards porn, which makes you feel worse.
It's a classic self-reinforcing neurological cycle. And then you add in the dopamine surge from orgasm that links pleasure directly to craving, to motivation. It's powerful behavioral reinforcement.
Powerful, yeah.
Absolutely. The brain is, incredibly efficient. It seeks the easiest path. And porn offers what the psychiatrist termed a calorie-dense neurological dopamine surge.
Wow. Calorie dense, like junk food for the brain.
Kind of, yeah. It's a potent, immediate hit. But here's the crucial bit. While it fills a void, it doesn't fulfill it.
Okay, explain that distinction. Fills versus fulfills.
It temporarily plugs the hole, suppresses the anxiety, gives the pleasure hit, but it doesn't address the underlying need for connection or meaning or whatever is actually missing. So it's super effective at suppressing emotions, making it a powerful coping tool, but ultimately incomplete. It can even worsen the root problems.
And this ties into that phenomenon, post-nut clarity, that many men talk about.
It does, yeah. What happens is the brain's lust circuitry, these primal reward pathways linked to desire, they actually suppress the more rational parts of the brain, like the prefrontal cortex.
So your risk assessment just goes out the window temporarily.
Pretty much. You might ignore glaring red flags in a potential partner, make decisions you wouldn't normally make, because that rational oversight is dialed down.
Why would the brain do that, though? It seems counterintuitive.
Well, from an evolutionary standpoint, the drive to procreate is incredibly strong. It's fundamental. The brain is wired to prioritize that, sometimes over rationality, if an opportunity presents itself. Rational thought can actually get in the way of that primal urge.
I actually had a pretty stark experience with this. I think I was maybe 21. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I was completely consumed with, desire. Arranging to meet someone I wasn't even that interested in, like an hour's drive away, just totally fixated.
Right.
And then, I don't know, I decided to just masturbate instead.
Yeah.
And literally immediately after, it was like a switch flipped. A totally different person.
Instant change.
Within seconds, I was thinking, what on earth were you doing? Getting out of bed at 3 a.m., driving all that way for someone you barely care about. The person I was 10 minutes before felt completely alien. It perfectly shows how that lust circuitry just takes over.
That's a powerful illustration, and it highlights something important. It can be, understandably, quite offensive to women
How so?
because it often involves objectification. The person becomes reduced to a sexual object, their full humanity, thoughts, feelings gets temporarily sidelined by that biological drive.
Right.
So, while a woman's feeling of being objectified is completely valid, understanding the biological wiring helps explain why it happens. It's a stark look at how that procreation drive is prioritized in the male brain, sometimes at the expense of connection.
Okay, so that's the internal landscape.
Ugh.
But what about the external? You mentioned societal shifts. It really does feel like we're in some kind of dating and mating crisis.
I think that's accurate, profoundly so. There's a lack of genuine sexual and emotional connection for many people. And part of that stems from huge societal changes, the sexual revolution, the invention of the pill, feminism.
All of which have had massive benefits, of course.
Absolutely, immense upsides. But an unintended consequence seems to be that this core human drive for sexual connection, when it's not met in a healthy relational way, leaves a part of the brain feeling, well, starved.
And when it's starved, it looks for substitutes.
Exactly. The brain seeks alternatives, and things like pornography become an easy, accessible substitute.
And you see how relationships themselves are changing. Maybe
Yeah.
less sex within them, fewer people getting married. This feeling that relationships are disposable.
Yeah, and dating apps contribute to that. They create this perception of choice, this endless buffet, which paradoxically might make commitment harder and fuel resentment, particularly, it seems, among certain groups of men.
This leads to a really
Yeah.
controversial idea that came up in the source material, this concept of a mass extinction event.
It's definitely provocative. The idea is that we might be seeing something akin to an extinction event, reproductively speaking, for a segment of men, say age 15 to 50, who just aren't procreating.
And the numbers kind of back that up, like South Korea.
South Korea is a stark example,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Their birth rate is down to 0.7, which is, well, it's astonishingly low, far below replacement level.
So how does this connect to natural selection? That seems like a big leap.
The thinking goes like this. The environment has changed drastically, especially post-COVID. Remote work, less socializing. It's eliminated a lot of those third spaces.
Like college, the office, clubs,
Mhm.
places you used to have to interact.
Precisely. Those places forced interaction. They compelled people, especially maybe less naturally outgoing men, to develop social skills, navigate social dynamics.
And now you can just opt out.
Yeah.
Avoid potentially awkward or painful social interaction altogether.
You can retreat into the digital world. So the analogies like Darwin's finches, the environment changes, and some are better adapted to the new reality than others.
So some men might just not be equipped socially for this new landscape and therefore aren't finding partners, aren't procreating. They're dying out reproductively.
That's the theory. And it's suggested this connects to some of the deep anger, the sense of entitlement, maybe even the incel movement, these involuntary celibates expressing intense frustration.
Is it seen as like an existential cry?
Potentially, yeah. An existential cry from men whose genes, in a sense, might be hitting a dead end in this new environment. It even connects to things like that viral bear or man in a forest question, highlighting women's stated fear of men.
Wow. Okay, so if this is happening, does society have some kind of responsibility here? Should society intervene?
That's a really thorny question. The psychiatrist's view was quite clear. Society as an abstract thing doesn't take responsibility. It falls to individuals. If everyone waits for society to fix it.
Nothing happens.
Right. But we are seeing governments react now, though it feels reactive, not proactive. South Korea's conservative movement is tackling this tension. China is literally paying people to have kids.
But should society intervene in procreation? It feels different from, say, medical interventions for health.
It's fundamentally different, especially because a man's right to reproduce, if you want to call it that, isn't absolute. It requires the consent of another person.
Yeah, you can't force someone.
Exactly. So it's a genuinely new societal problem without easy historical parallels or answers.
Which brings us back around, doesn't it? If the external world is this complex and maybe uncontrollable,
Then the focus has to shift inward. That's the core philosophy that emerged. True control, real agency lies within yourself, not in trying to bend the external world, global politics, your boss, the thermostat, to your will.
so mastering your internal state is the key. That's where happiness, productivity, success actually come from.
That's the argument. It's about crafting yourself from the inside out rather than constantly battling the outside.
Okay, but how? How do you actually do that? What are the steps?
The very first step, and it's a big one, is recognizing external failure. Really internalizing that, trying to control your boss, your partner, the person who isn't texting back. It's almost always doomed to fail.
Or at least lead to conflict and frustration.
Exactly. Think about arguments over the air conditioning. It's just two people trying to force their preference onto the shared environment. It's recognizing that pattern of failure and trying to control the external.
That's tough, though.
Yeah.
It's so ingrained to try and fix things outside ourselves. How do you get past that?
It often comes from hitting a wall repeatedly, truly seeing that the strategy doesn't work. Once you accept that, then you can move to step 2.
Yeah.
Understanding internal causality.
Internal causality. What does that mean practically?
It's like knowing where the gas station is for your internal state. Where do your desires, your temptations, your emotional reactions actually come from? And then learning not just to suppress them, but to sublimate them.
Sublimate. Finding a healthier outlet for the energy.
Precisely. Suppression is like holding that beach ball underwater. It takes constant effort and eventually pops up, often with more force. Sublimation is redirecting the underlying energy into something constructive.
And a huge part of this must be understanding your emotions, right?
Right.
Because so many patterns are driven by unconscious feelings.
Absolutely critical. Take the example of someone who repeatedly dates commitment-phobic people.
Okay.
Often the pattern isn't just about the other person. It can actually reflect your own hidden fear of commitment. You unconsciously pick someone who won't fully commit because it protects you from confronting your own fear.
Wow. So you set yourself up to fail, in a way.
In a way, yes. Or rather, you set yourself up to avoid the deeper fear. And the really wild part, the psychiatrist mentions seeing cases where the commitment phobe does overcome their fear and wants to commit.
And then the other person panics.
Exactly. They suddenly retreat, find flaws, get terrified. It just shows how crucial emotional awareness and regulation are for healthy relationships and for self-mastery in general.
So how do you cultivate something deeper, like a sense of purpose, amidst all this internal work? The source mentioned dharma.
Yeah, dharma. It's a Sanskrit word, often translated as duty, but it's deeper than just obligation. It's the capacity to choose the difficult path simply because it's the right thing to do.
Not for some future reward or to avoid pain later.
No, it's not delayed gratification. It's about inherent rightness. The analogy used was stepping in front of a bullet to save a child.
Okay, yeah.
That's not a calculated decision about future pain or reward.
Yeah.
It's an immediate, instinctual action driven by duty, by love, by something profound. When you find your dharma, difficult things can paradoxically become easy because they align with your core being. It's the opposite of being pulled around by external wants, by greed.
Finding your why. But how do you actually find it or cultivate it?
The first step is kind of counterintuitive. Evacuate external influences. Consciously try to discard the wants and desires that come from outside, from advertising, from social media, from what society tells you should want. These things might trigger something in you, but they're rarely your true, deep why. They're often just noise.
That's hard. So many desires feel like our own, but maybe they're just absorbed.
Very often. Which leads to the second step. Seek silence.
Actual silence.
Yes. We live in constant sensory bombardment, podcasts, news, notifications, music. You rarely just sit quietly with yourself. You need to actively carve out time, remove that input to allow your own internal truth, your authentic self, to actually surface.
But that can be terrifying for people.
It really can, because often when the external noise stops, what comes up is all the suppressed stuff, anxiety, guilt, shame, racing thoughts. Many people avoid being alone with themselves for exactly this reason.
There was that study, wasn't there? College students choosing electric shocks over just sitting with their thoughts.
Stark, isn't it? So the challenge isn't necessarily to stop the thoughts, but to learn to observe them without immediately reacting or getting swept away. Acknowledge them, let them pass without judgment. That detachment is key to finding that deeper dharma.
Okay, let's pivot to the practical side of overcoming addiction, building on this. Diagnosis precedes treatment, right? Understand the why first.
Absolutely. You can't fix something effectively if you don't understand its roots.
So for digital addictions like porn, what are some concrete strategies?
One key thing is scheduling usage. If you're not ready for full abstinence, restrict it. Say 1 specific hour on 1 specific device.
Why is that important?
It contains it. It stops the addiction from bleeding into every spare moment, every crack in your day. It creates boundaries.
Makes sense. What else?
Anticipate and prepare. You know when your urges are likely strongest, maybe late at night, or when you're stressed. You need to pre-plan your coping mechanisms before that moment hits.
Like having a fire drill for your urges.
Exactly. You can't invent new strategies when you're already in the thick of craving. You need practiced alternatives ready to go. Think of it like installing the fire hydrant before the fire.
Okay. And urge surfing, what's that?
It's understanding that cravings, like hunger, have a natural arc. They build, they peak, and crucially, if you don't feed them, they will dissipate.
Or you just have to ride it out.
It's essentially a waiting game. Acknowledge the urge, don't fight it frantically, just observe it, know it will pass if you wait.
Is there anything physical you can do in that moment?
Alternate nostril breathing was mentioned. It's a simple yogic technique, but it has a direct physiological effect. It helps calm the nervous system.
But you need to practice it beforehand.
Yes, definitely. Practice it when you're calm so it becomes an automatic tool you can deploy effectively when the urge actually hits.
This brings us to willpower. How should we think about that?
This was a really interesting reframing. Willpower isn't about winning the internal fight. Willpower is the fight itself.
So as long as you're struggling, you're exercising willpower.
Exactly. Every moment you resist, every moment you feel that internal conflict and don't give in, you're actively building that willpower muscle. The addiction only truly wins when you decide to leave the ring, when you mentally give up beforehand.
So resisting for a while and then caving actually makes it worse next time.
It can, yes. It strengthens the addiction. It's like with opioid addiction, the body learns exactly how much pain or craving it needs to generate to get the reward. Resisting, then caving, teaches it to scream louder next time.
So, like Sun Tzu said, know when to fight and when not to.
Precisely. Pick your battles. Either commit fully to abstinence and fight with everything you have, or, if you know you're going to cave, maybe give in earlier to avoid that intense reinforcement cycle. It sounds counterintuitive, but it prevents strengthening the craving.
But ultimately, overcoming addiction long-term needs more than just techniques, right? It needs that deeper why we talked about.
Absolutely. External pressure, like just trying to keep a partner happy, usually isn't enough fuel for the long haul. It has to be deeply internal, deeply personal, your own reason.
And finding that reason, going through that struggle, it's almost like a spiritual journey.
It often becomes one, yes. Overcoming a serious addiction is like a boot camp for self-mastery. It forges resilience, strengthens your ability to handle any adversity. People who truly conquer addiction often emerge with incredible spiritual depth and strength. There's also a strong correlation, interestingly, between meaninglessness in life and porn addiction, highlighting that deeper void it's trying and failing to fill.
Okay, shifting gears slightly, but related technologies, specifically AI. Is this another layer of complexity, potentially another addiction trap?
It certainly looks that way. Take AI girlfriends, for instance.
Yeah.
They seem like a continuation of this trend of, unfulfilling substitutes for real connection, but the prediction is they'll become even more addictive.
More addictive than porn?
Potentially, yes, because of unpredictable reward schedules. Instead of constant validation, they'll likely be designed with random reinforcement, sometimes attentive, sometimes distant, like a loot box or a volatile partner.
And that randomness is more addictive.
Much more, psychologically speaking. Think about gambling or checking your phone. It's the chance of a reward that keeps you hooked, more than a guaranteed one.
Wow, that's kind of scary. And beyond addiction, what about the impact on our skills, our actual human abilities?
This is a huge concern. There was an MIT study looking at students using ChatGPT.
What did it find?
Some really striking things. Around 80% couldn't really recall the content of essays that AI wrote for them. Their communication style became kind of soulless, and brain scans suggested about 50% weaker neural activity in relevant areas due to disuse.
50% weaker. That's massive. So it's actual brain atrophy.
Essentially, yes, use it or lose it. If AI is doing the thinking, the communicating, the connecting for you, your brain, being efficient, just starts shedding those pathways it deems unnecessary.
And this could impact critical thinking, communication, forming relationships, the very things we need.
Exactly. And it's compounded because AI tends to reflect our own biases back at us. It gives you what it thinks you want to hear.
Which feels good, like validation.
But it can seriously distort your perception of reality. Imagine an AI validating a narcissist's skewed worldview instead of offering a reality check.
So the skill becomes prompt engineering, asking the right questions.
Right. Knowing how to interact with the AI effectively is crucial. But then the deeper question is, how do you know if you're asking the right questions in the first place, especially if your own critical thinking is getting weaker?
That's a paradox then. You almost need to use AI now to stay competitive in many areas.
But relying on it for the actual thinking part actively weakens your own cognitive abilities.
Like taking the elevator instead of the stairs. Easier now, harder later.
That's a perfect analogy. Makes the current trip easier, but diminishes your capacity for future climbs.
So pulling this all together, this deep dive has really covered a lot. Mental health, addiction, societal shifts, technology. It's complex.
It is, but the through line, the core message that keeps emerging, seems to be about internal work, self-mastery.
That navigating all these external challenges ultimately comes back down to managing your internal state.
Yeah. And maybe it leaves us with a question to ponder. What are the long-term implications if we keep outsourcing deep human needs, connection, thinking, meaning-making to technology?
If the very brain pathways for genuine connection and critical thought are weakening, what does that mean for us? For human relationships, for our ability to thrive?
It's a profound question for the future.
And just to end on a slightly different note, a more personal one, I found it really touching when the psychiatrist was asked about the most powerful love in their life.
What was the answer?
Without hesitation, it was the love for their nuclear family. And they even created this beautiful tradition, Mother's Day Eve.
Mother's Day Eve.
Yeah, a whole evening dedicated to celebrating their wife the night before Mother's Day, preparing everything, making it special, showing that appreciation in advance.
That's really lovely.
It really is a powerful reminder, I think, of where true connection, purpose, and love can ultimately be found not necessarily in fixing the world, but in cherishing the people right in front of you.